And Peter Obi joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Charles.
And happy Democracy Day.
Thank you.
You've been away from television for a while. You've been making very few comments about a lot of things that have been happening. Why is that?
Well, just following up and making sure that other people make the comments and I listen, because part of leadership is also listening and learning. And that's what has been happening. I've also been contributing a bit of mine.
Indeed. This week, of course, Democracy Day, it's being marked this week here in Nigeria. How concerned are you that democracy in this country remains extremely fragile, and some would say in peril after a quarter of a century?
Well, for me, that was part of my comments today, because you said I tweeted today. The question is, the fundamental question to ask today is to ask, are we truly democratic? Unexamined life is not worth living. You must at any step try to examine what we are doing. After 25 years of experimenting and trying to be a democratic country, it is now time to ask questions. Are we truly democratic? And you start by defining what it's supposed to be. Democracy is supposed to be government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the fundamental question, is this government of the people? Is it by the people? And is it for the people? Beneath this is supposed to be a benefit for the people, which is not there today. Absence of which have led to leadership failure over the years that brought massive corruption, hunger, sufferings, all sorts of pain, insecurity, everything. So the opposite is what we've experienced. What we should actually be celebrating is that some sort of state capture, where those who have captured it have cornered all the benefits that are meant for the people. All the people are supposed to see in terms of good education, good health, and pulling them out of poverty have been cornered by the few that have captured the system. And they continue at the suffering and expense of all. And the list is endless. You can go there and see the measure of democracy. We are 4.23, which shows we're low. You look at the hunger index, we are 109 over 124 countries measured, which shows we're low. You look at corruption index, we are 145 over 180, which shows we're low. You look at law and order, which is supposed to be an intangible asset that drives democracy. We're very low. We're 120 over countries measured. So you could see we're low in every facet. If you compare even the electioneering process that brings our leaders into office, again, we're very low. Let's just take the recent 3 elections in comparable countries of South Africa, India, Mexico. In all these 3 countries, first is that over 60% of registered voters participated in voting. Polling booths opened, over 80% opened on time and closed on time without incidents, no ballot snatching, no this and everything. And results were transmitted electronically without any hitches, no glitches, nothing.
Well, there was a slight hitch in the South African transmission, but not to the degree.
No, it didn't affect the result because every party accepted it. It was a very minor thing. I watched it sitting down in my own sitting room from beginning to the end. India, that was supposed to have over, the people that voted in India are 3 times the Nigerian population. Yet you could see it. The election was accepted. In our own case, less than 25% of the voters participated.
And indeed, those who came out, many of them were prevented from
Thank you. At the polling booths, did not open on time, closed late, closed early, with all sorts of. And when you think about it, in these countries that I mentioned, these were carried out by ordinary citizens. In our own case, despite all glitches, everything, it was being executed by professors. So there must be something we need to re-examine and ask ourselves question, how do we get it right? For our children, for the future generation, we can't continue on this path.
So how do we get it right?
By doing it rightly. The government can stamp and said, I recall late President Yar'Adua, who's admitted that the process that brought him to office is faulty. And he was bent on changing it and putting the right steps to do that.
So do you think
which was followed up by Jonathan,
right,
and participated in an election where for the first time the ruling party and the president lost the election. Just like you can see in the way I've just told you, the ANC in South Africa had a reduced position. In India, the same thing happened. They accepted it.
So do you think that the reason for this problem that you've identified is politicians in power consciously refusing to give those institutions the latitude to operate?
Exactly. And making sure it happened. Institutions must be respected by those in office. They must make sure for the future of the society, for the future of our children, a leader or those who are in leadership must do things rightly.
So in that regard, when you look at the highest office in this country, an office that you aspire to, what do you see? Do you see an individual that respects or does not respect the rule of law, and who through his actions and those of his deputies and possibly ruling party supports or does not support the fabric of this country's democracy?
Charles, I leave this. You can ask ordinary Nigerians.
Well, I'm asking you.
I don't think they do. No. They don't. That's why it's happening. If they do, it won't happen.
You do recognize, though, that a lot of the people who are in power have inherited decades of rot, and you can't wave a magic wand and all that rot will disappear.
Charles, I don't like discussing this today. No matter where you start, if you mean well, you can start correcting them. The role of a leader is not to remind people of the past or mention the past or think about the past. Your role is to show the path by doing things that are right. Change starts from you. By you, if you decide to walk the right path, that's how it starts. You can decide, okay, yesterday it was wrong. That's even part of why we hired you. Because it was wrong yesterday, we didn't hire you to remind us or start giving us the excuse, but to show the solution and how best to do it. That is leadership.
So in that respect, after 25 years of unbroken democracy, which Nigeria is marking this week, are we walking on the edge of, one put it? Are you pessimistic or optimistic?
Very, very pessimistic. We're actually walking in the right direction.
In the right direction?
In the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction.
We're actually walking in the wrong direction.
Right.
Very wrong direction. And we need to change it and work in the right direction. And it has to start from the number one person.
Well, let's assess that walking in the right direction or wrong direction and that number one person. Let's turn to President Tinubu's first year anniversary. After 1 year in office, do you think he has displayed the strength and the ability to tackle Nigeria's many problems? Are you impressed with mega projects, for example, like the Lagos-Calabar Highway?
Well, you know, I've never made comment about 1 year in office. The reason why is simple. I would say that President Tinubu have kept to his campaign promises. Throughout the campaign, he consistently maintained that he will continue from where Buhari stopped. And that is done very well. I would say excellent. I'll give him excellent pass mark. And it's very simple. Dollar was 460, is now 1,005. Fuel was 238, is now about 700. Diesel was 844, is now 1,415. A bag of rice is 35,000, is now about 80. A bag of beans was similar, 35, is now about 90. Gari was 27.28, is now 49.50. A tuber of yam was about 2,007 to 3,000, now is about 10,000. Tomato basket is about 40,000. That is over 150,000. Electricity is 66 kilowatts, is now over 200. You can go on and on. Even bread, which is a basic thing, other countries that subside, like Egypt, bread, smaller, medium bread was 450 naira. It's not 900 naira. The big one is 900, is 1,005. Our debt, like I mentioned, was 87. By end of last year, it was actually 97. The highest we've done within that short period. Now is over 100 trillion. In fact, this year alone, the government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, have issued and taken from the system borrowing of over 16 trillion naira. You can imagine the interest at almost 20%. It's about 3.2 trillion after 12 months. At that, last year, in a period of 9 months, we spent about 5.7 trillion servicing as debt interest on our payments. So add that. So overall, you've done well. Let's even go back to the overall of the economy. By the time he took over last year, we were still the biggest economy in Africa with $477 billion as our GDP, followed by South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Morocco. Today, we are number 4. South Africa is number 1 now, I think about $373 billion. Egypt is second, $347 billion, followed by Algeria, 266. And we are now 252 billion GDP economy. It's even worse when you go to our per capita. We are actually 1/4 of per capita of the list of these nations that I mentioned. South Africa is over 6,000 per capita. Egypt is 4,000 plus. So is Algeria. And then Morocco, which among this is supposed to be the 5th, at 4,210, and we are 1,000 plus. So we actually have gone low. We're coming from a low of per capita of 3,000 plus in 2014. So we've, every other thing have headed south. You see, insecurity is worsened.
Well, let's
corruption has worsened.
Right. Let's
adherence to the rule of law has worsened. The country has been its highest.
Let's look at one issue that you mentioned, and you came up with quite voluble statistics there, and that is the issue of the economy. The president, in the clip we played earlier, before our interview began, made it clear that he was aware of the fact that there would be for gain. I mean, if you look at every economy, from Argentina to all the ones that have tried to reform their economies, there's always a bit of gain comes. That comes with putting in reforms, fundamental reforms that would eventually lead to an improvement in the economy. What I'm curious to know is, if you had become president, how difficult would it have been to govern in the current environment? Because you would have inherited essentially what President Buhari left for you to inherit. Because some have argued that whoever took over from President Buhari would have inherited a country that would have been very difficult to fix, with so much borrowing and, you know, the currency and all the rest of it. Yes, you could argue that the government, that was part of what they said were their reforms. But in other words, you would not have been able to turn things around and deliver in 1 year.
Charles, the first thing you do as a leader who inherited a difficult situation is to lead by example, and then start by your own style, by your behavior, your conduct, how you manage the resources. You cannot say that things are difficult when you're living in conspicuous consumption. The things you don't do. Nigeria today is a country with the highest amount of people without homes. Over 24 million. Yet, you're spending 20-something billion to build a house for one person. Mr. Jazz, are you saying that a vice president of Nigeria cannot live in a 4-bedroom house? You live in the UK. 10 Downing Street is 3 rooms. That is an economy that is almost 10 times our economy today. And the Prime Minister lives in 3 rooms. So that's where you start. You start by living like somebody who is coming through difficulty, who is facing difficulty, who wants to change things. That's how we do it. You don't engage in what we've been doing, buying vehicles, partying and everything, as if things are normal. When you say there's difficulty, you need to deal with the issue of cutting the cost of governance. That's where you start. So you need to deal with the issue of massive, that is showing that I am now, okay, things are bad. Just have served the system. Where I came in and found that things are bad. And we start by cutting the cost of governance.
So is that what you'd like to see him I mean, the first year is gone. You know, that's a fact. But he's now entering his second year. Or he has entered. What are the things that
you have to also show a clear plan. It is not enough to say, oh, we're going to go through problem. If we're going to go through problem, this is very simple. You enter a plane. There's a bad weather. There's going to be a turbulence. The pilot says, we're going to go through bad weather. It's going to take us maybe 1 hour, 2 hours because of this. And he follows it through. That is not the time. In that bad weather, everybody, even the crew, are asked to sit down. That's not time to start serving food and wine and everything when everything is up and down. That's why we're there. We're still dancing and everything. I always say what happened to the Titanic is what is happening in Nigeria. While the plane was going on, the people on the upper deck were busy dancing until the whole thing. That's what is happening now. We should change and do things rightly. We can change and manage corruption and everything and all that.
Well, hopefully the people in power and in the know are listening to you. But let me move away from President Tinubu and come to you. In terms of the candidates who will potentially challenge President Tinubu in 2027, and you certainly sound like one of them, and how voters rate them with regard to how fit for the job they are, I am quite sure that many people will say that you obviously stand out. But do you think that your public standing has grown or diminished since the 2023 election?
Charles, I don't know. It's only the public that will know.
Yeah, but you interact with them.
Mine is to continue interacting and being part of the process of building a new Nigeria that is possible. Because we can't go on this way. We're headed to, we must do things rightly. Like I always said, I'm not desperate to be president. I'm desperate to see Nigeria work. And work for the poor people of Nigeria.
Right.
The system has been very uncaring for the people of Nigeria. And we must fix it. Work where we have to remove this corruption that we, the politicians, have and make it better.
Right. Well, you said that we should go and ask the public about their assessment of your public standing, whether it's grown or diminished. Well, one man who is a member of the public, in a manner of speaking, who seems to think that your standing has diminished is the Nobel laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka. He recently, you are unfit to govern Nigeria. What's your reaction to that?
Well, quite frankly, I will not make a comment to that. Wole Soyinka is the father. I have a policy. I don't respond when my fathers talk.
Yeah, but he's delivered a punch.
I leave it to them, because when I became their age, I want those younger ones to respect me, though I will also try to put myself in such a position that I will respect myself before that.
Well, he's delivered.
But I assure you,
right.
I assure you, one of the things he made is that he talked about the obedience.
Yeah.
Me inciting them. Charles, I will never, knowingly, and I have never, knowingly or unknowingly, asked any of the obedience or the young people to say anything against an elder, a priest, a pastor, an imam, and everything. Never. It will never happen.
Nevertheless,
never will happen. And I don't make comments when they make comments.
Right.
It is left for Nigerians to know whether I'm fit or not. I've been a successful businessman in the private sector. I've been in the corporate world and can say I'm one of the most successful. I've also served the state where I still challenge all those who have served. Let's put our records side by side and let me know. And when I served, the only measure of development was Millennium Development Goals, which I started 7 years after. When it ended, I was #1.
Yeah, well, I'm going to come to that in a minute, but I just want to finish, because we're going to talk about the state, how you were governor of Anambra State. But just returning to Wole Soyinka briefly, you said you've never incited people against him or anyone else.
I will never do it to anybody.
But does he have a point when he says that by not controlling, or at least trying to control, the online trolls who he says are obedience, that are responsible for the insults directed at him, that you are tacitly encouraging such behavior?
No human being on earth that I know today have controlled online
trolls?
Nobody. Go and see what they write about me. It's even worse than what they write about him. Go and read it. You can Google it. You can see it.
Well,
it's
I
there.
have seen it.
Yes, so if they do that against me, how do I now control? Who do I know that is doing that? It could actually be those who are his friends who claim that they are obedience, doing it in order to make him make such statements. But like I said, he remains the revered father.
Okay.
And I respect him, and I'll keep respecting
Right.
him.
Let's move on from there. What about the other person who seems to have taken aim at you, and that's the former Director General of your campaign organization, Doyin Okube. I mean, having supported you in 2023, he now believes that Bola Tinubu is the best of the 2023 presidential candidates. I mean, at the very least, that must... What's your reaction to that?
It's a personal assessment. It's just personal to him. And like I said, Charles, all these things that happened, I don't want to make comment about them, because what we are talking now is the present position. Is Gary cheaper?
Yeah, but those
Is
kinds of comments, he's saying those things in public,
if it will make Gary, if you make Gary or Yam cheaper, fine with me.
Right.
If it's going to help in managing the whole corruption we're passing through, fine with me. Let's deal with the issues of the president. Whenever people are talking, this person said, Charles, I don't do politics of he said, she said. No. Let's deal with the issues. We have a problem. We have a big problem. Look at what FAO has said, that those who are going to be hungry in Nigeria have increased from 24 million to 30-something million. We have young people, look at what UNICEF released the other day. So we have bad results all over the place. That's what we should focus, not whether Peter Obi is fit or not. Charles, I'm fit to be a president of Nigeria. I'm competent. I can tell you that put me line with other people who are competing in terms of education, in terms of fitness, in terms of background. I can stand tall against them.
Well, you talked about the states, so let me bring